For 2 years, Liam Hart had barely spoken to the woman he married. In his mind, she was nothing more than a piece of elegant furniture placed perfectly in the penthouse for the occasional charity photograph or magazine spread. Sophia Bennett had the grace and beauty that looked flawless in high society pictures. Beyond that, she was invisible to him. It was not love, not even companionship. It was an arrangement. But everything shifted the night he opened the bathroom door. It was late past midnight, and Liam had just returned from a business trip that ended in an exhausting flight and an even more exhausting board meeting. The penthouse was silent, the kind of silence that usually comforted him. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, intending to retreat to his private study, when he heard the faint sound of running water. The bathroom door down the hallway was slightly ajar. Steam curled out into the corridor like ghostly fingers. He moved closer, almost without thinking, the quiet hum of the water pulling him in. Through the gap he caught sight of her. Sophia sat on the marble floor of the shower, knees drawn to her chest, head bowed. The water poured over her like a relentless curtain. Her long hair clung to her bare shoulders. Tears ran down her face, indistinguishable from the droplets sliding along her skin. But he could see the way her lips trembled, the way her body shook with silent sobs. Liam froze, a strange tightness catching in his chest. In all the public events where she had smiled flawlessly, in all the dinners where she had been perfectly poised, he had never seen her like this. Stripped of her designer gowns and polished makeup, she was raw and human in a way that unsettled him. He told himself to leave, to close the door quietly and walk away. This was not part of the arrangement, but he stayed. His hand rested on the edge of the door, his pulse loud in his ears. He wanted to say something, anything, yet words felt like an intrusion. Sophia lifted her head slightly as if sensing she was no longer alone. Her eyes met his through the haze of steam. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. In that fragile second, Liam realized something he had never allowed himself to consider. She was not a decoration. She was a woman who could break, who could feel, who could cry when no one was supposed to be watching. And the sight of her vulnerable and bare would follow him long after the water stopped running. Liam did not speak of what he had seen that night. The image of Sophia in the shower lingered in his mind like a haunting melody, but he buried it beneath work meetings and the endless stream of demands that filled his calendar. He told himself it was a private moment, one that meant nothing yet. He found himself glancing at her more often in the days that followed. Sophia, for her part, pretended nothing had happened. She moved around the penthouse quietly, like a ghost with perfect posture, always composed, always distant. 2 years of marriage had trained her to keep her emotions hidden behind an immaculate mask. It had started with a handshake instead of a kiss on their wedding day, and it had never progressed beyond polite small talk and the occasional posed photograph. The marriage was an arrangement agreed upon by their families for reasons that had nothing to do with love. The Hart Empire was on the verge of a massive expansion into Europe, but Liam's father had insisted he project stability to the press and to investors. A bachelor CEO was unpredictable. A married one was dependable. Sophia's family, once prestigious, had been drowning in debt after a failed real estate venture. Her parents had offered the marriage as a solution. The Harts would pay off the debt, the Bennets would provide. a refined, educated daughter to stand beside Liam. The contract was signed, the vows exchanged, and the walls built between them from the very first day. On a crisp Thursday morning, Liam stood in the kitchen, his tablet in one hand, a black coffee in the other. He was scrolling through a list of upcoming events when his eyes paused on one in particular. The annual Hudson Gala, a gathering of New York's elite and international art patrons, was 3 nights away. It was an event that demanded appearances, that invited speculation if certain people were absent. He had never taken Sophia to any of these. He had not wanted her there. But something made him look up from the tablet and watch her at the dining table. She was sketching something in a leather-bound notebook, her brow furrowed in concentration. He cleared his throat. She glanced up, her eyes cautious. "Do you have something suitable to wear to the Hudson Gala?" His voice was flat, almost businesslike, but it made her pause mid-motion. "I'm sorry," what she asked. "A dress," he clarified, "appropriate to accompany me to the gala on Saturday." Sophia blinked at him, the words sinking in slowly. In 2 years she had never once appeared publicly on his arm. "Why are you asking me now?" she said, her voice tinged with suspicion. "Because I need you there," he replied without looking away. "It's important." She studied him for a long moment as if searching for the catch. "And if I don't want to go?" His gaze hardened slightly. "It's not optional." She let out a small, incredulous laugh. "Of course, like everything else in this marriage." He ignored the sting in her tone, but something flickered in his chest. "This event brings together some of our most influential partners. I want you to be presentable." Her chin lifted. "Presentable?" she repeated softly, as though tasting the word. "You don't even know who I am, Liam. You've never bothered to find out." His silence was an answer in itself. She leaned back in her chair. "Tell me my favorite color. Tell me what I studied. Tell me what I do when I'm not sitting in this penthouse playing the role you cast me in." His jaw tightened, but no words came. She gave a short, humorless smile. "That's what I thought." Closing her notebook, she stood. "I'll go to your gala, Mr. Hart. Not because it's a duty, but because I'm curious to see the world you chose over me." As she walked past him, he felt a strange pull and unwillingness to let her go without saying something, but the words never formed. That night, alone in his study, Liam stared at a blank document on his laptop. His mind should have been on the final numbers for a property acquisition in Milan. But all he could see was the way Sophia's eyes had glinted with defiance. For the first time in 2 years, he realized he did not have complete control over her. And for reasons he could not explain, the thought unsettled him far more than it should have. The night of the Hudson Gala arrived with a chill in the air and a restless hum in Liam's chest that he could not quite shake. He had not seen Sophia since breakfast. When she finally appeared at the top of the staircase, every sound in the penthouse seemed to fade. She wore a deep emerald gown that moved like liquid silk, the kind of dress that drew the eye, not because it was loud, but because it whispered elegance in every fold. Her hair was swept into a soft twist, exposing the line of her neck. Liam told himself he was only observing because he needed her to look the part. Yet when she stepped toward him, something in his pulse shifted. "You look appropriate," he said, his voice carefully neutral. She offered a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. In the car, silence filled the space between them. She stared out the tinted window, her reflection fractured by passing street lights. Liam wanted to ask her what she had been sketching that morning, but the words caught in his throat. At the gala, the air shimmered with the scent of expensive perfume and the low hum of strategic conversations. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across gowns and tuxedos. As they entered, cameras flashed, and for the first time, Sophia's hand rested lightly on his arm for the sake of appearances. He told himself it meant nothing. It was only when he saw her in conversation with an older European patron, speaking flawless Italian as she described an art installation, that he felt the first prick of surprise. She was poised but animated, her eyes alight in a way he had never witnessed at home. The patron laughed, clearly charmed, and Liam found himself lingering at the edge of the crowd, watching her as though he were seeing a stranger. When the man finally moved on, Liam stepped closer. "I didn't know you spoke Italian," he said. "There's a lot you don't know," she replied evenly, taking a sip of champagne. Before he could respond, a new voice joined them. "Sophia Bennett, I presume." Adrian Cole was younger than Liam, a rising star in international investment circles, known for his charisma and relentless pursuit of opportunities. He extended a hand to Sophia, and she accepted it with a gracious smile. "I've heard about your work in adaptive design," Adrian said. "Your portfolio from the Bennett Foundation, Renovations, was impressive." Liam's brows drew together. He had not known she had done such work. "You've seen my portfolio?" Sophia asked. "I make it my business to notice talent," Adrian replied. "In fact, I'm working on a luxury project in Milan and could use someone with your vision." Liam felt something tighten in his chest. "Sophia's commitments are here," he said before she could answer. She glanced at him briefly, then back to Adrian. "I'd be interested to hear more," she said. "Perhaps we can meet to discuss it." Adrian smiled. "Perfect. I'll have my assistant reach out." As the evening wore on, Liam found himself staying closer to her than he intended, intercepting conversations before Adrian could reappear. It was not strategy, it was instinct. In the car ride home, she finally broke the silence. "That was exhausting," she murmured. "You handled it well," he said. Even with Adrian Cole circling like a hawk. Her lips curved faintly. "Why was that jealousy I heard?" He looked out the window. It was awareness of what she pressed. His jaw worked, of the fact that some men don't see you as decoration. The words hung between them, heavier than he expected. Back at the penthouse, she disappeared into her room without another word, leaving Liam alone in the dim light of the living room, his tie loose, his mind restless. For the first time in 2 years, he wondered if he had made a mistake, not knowing the woman who bore his name. The following week passed with a strange tension in the air, the kind that clung to quiet hallways and lingered in glances that lasted a fraction too long. Liam told himself it was the usual post-event fatigue, yet he noticed small changes in his own behavior. He paused at the breakfast table instead of leaving immediately. He found excuses to ask Sophia if she needed anything before heading to the office. She answered politely with the same distance she had maintained for 2 years, but there was a subtle edge in her eyes now, as if she knew something had shifted. On Wednesday afternoon, Liam returned home earlier than usual, an unfamiliar impulse pulling him away from the office. As the elevator doors opened onto the penthouse, voices reached him from the living room. He stepped in quietly and saw Sophia seated across from Adrian Cole. A leather portfolio lay open between them, displaying architectural sketches and interior concepts. Sophia was leaning forward, pointing at a drawing, her face lit with energy. The natural light in Milan will completely change the way people experience the space, she was saying. Adrian nodded with interest. Exactly. That's why I think you're the perfect person for this. You understand both structure and feeling. Liam stepped forward, his voice calm but edged. I wasn't aware we were entertaining guests. Sophia looked up unflinching. Adrian stopped by to discuss the Milan project. And you're considering it? Liam asked. Yes, she replied, because it's an opportunity to do something meaningful with my skills. Adrian glanced between them. I should go, he said, closing the portfolio, but Liam didn't move from the doorway. Stay, he said evenly. I want to understand why my wife is making career decisions without talking to me. Sophia's gaze sharpened. Because for 2 years, Liam, you've shown no interest in who I am beyond being presentable. This is the first time in years someone has looked at me and seen more than a last name on an invitation. Liam's jaw tightened. You're my wife. On paper, she said quietly. And on paper, I'm free to use my talents as I wish. Adrian shifted uncomfortably. I think I'll let you two finish this in private. He gathered his things and left. The door had barely closed when Liam stepped closer to Sophia. Do you think he's offering this job out of pure professional admiration? She didn't flinch. Yes, and if there's more, I can handle it. You're naive if you believe that, Liam said, his voice low. And you're arrogant if you think you can decide for me what's worth my time. She shot back. They stood in silence for a moment, their breathing uneven. I don't like the way he looks at you, Liam admitted finally. Sophia's eyes narrowed. And what way is that? Like he wants something that belongs to me. The words slipped out before he could stop them. She laughed not with humor, but with disbelief. Belongs to you, Liam. I am not property. I am not a suit or a car or a penthouse view you can own. His gaze did not waver. You are my wife. That means something to me. It means nothing to me if it's just about control, she replied. The tension hung heavy, and for a moment, Liam thought she might walk away. But instead, she picked up her portfolio, slid her sketches inside, and said, If you want to keep pretending this marriage is about appearances, fine. But I won't stop living my life because you've decided now, suddenly, to pay attention. She left the room without looking back. Her footsteps fading down the hallway, Liam stood alone, his hands clenched at his sides, the taste of her defiance still sharp in his mind. For the first time in years, he felt something he could not disguise as irritation or business strategy. It was jealousy, raw and uninvited, and it burned hotter than he cared to admit. That night, Liam could not sleep. He lay in his darkened bedroom, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word of their argument. The way Sophia's voice had sharpened when she said she would not stop living her life, the way she had stood her ground without raising her tone, haunted him in a way he had not expected. He was not used to people challenging him. Most backed down the moment his voice dropped or his gaze hardened, but she had not. She had looked right through him as if searching for something he did not even know was there. In the early hours of the morning, he rose and walked through the quiet penthouse, ending up outside her closed bedroom door. He stood there for a moment, listening to the faint sound of her breathing, then turned away before he could knock. The next day he buried himself in work, but the unease clung to him like a shadow. Late in the afternoon, he passed by his father's office at Hart Holdings and overheard a conversation he was not meant to hear. His father's voice was low but firm. The Bennett arrangement was the smartest move you made, Liam. Their debts were a liability. Now they're out of the way, and your image is clean. The European investors trust a married man more than they would ever trust a bachelor. Liam froze. The arrangement. He had always known the marriage was a transaction, but hearing it framed so coldly twisted something in his gut. That evening, as he entered the penthouse, he found Sophia in the living room, curled up with a book. The warm glow from the lamp caught in her hair, and for a moment he just stood there, taking in the quiet picture she made. He walked over and said, "Can we talk?" She marked her page carefully before looking up. "About what? About why we got married?" he said. Her brows lifted slightly. "You mean about why you agreed to marry me?" He sat across from her. "I know about your family's debts. I know they were drowning after the lawsuit. I know my family paid it off." She closed her book and set it aside. "Then you know everything," she said simply. "No," he replied. "I don't know how you felt about it." Her gaze was steady. "How did I feel? Like an asset being traded. Like my life was suddenly worth a dollar amount and a signature on a contract. I told myself it was worth it to save my parents from losing everything. But deep down I hoped foolishly that maybe over time we could be more than a business deal." Liam swallowed. "I told you from the start that it was an arrangement," she finished for him. "Yes, and I believed you. But believing you didn't stop me from wanting more. It didn't stop me from looking at you some nights and wondering if you ever saw me at all." Her voice was calm, but each word landed with weight. "When the first month passed without so much as a touch, I told myself it was fine. When the first year ended and we still lived like polite strangers, I told myself I didn't care. But the truth is, Liam, I did care. I cared enough for it to hurt." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I saw you in the shower that night." Her eyes flickered, but she said nothing. "I didn't mean to intrude," he continued, "but I saw you crying, and it made me realize I've never known who you are. I've never asked." She let the silence stretch before answering. "You've never wanted to know. And now suddenly, because another man shows interest, you decide to care." He flinched at the accuracy of her words. "It's not like that," he said. "Then tell me what it is," she challenged. He opened his mouth, but no clear answer came. She rose from her seat, smoothing the folds of her dress. "You can't, can you, because you don't know. And until you do, Liam, this arrangement is all it will ever be." She walked away, leaving him alone in the lamplight, her absence heavier than her presence had been. That night he sat in his study long after midnight, staring at the skyline, realizing for the first time that if he did nothing, he might actually lose her, not as a contract, not as an accessory, but as a person he was starting to want in ways he could not yet name. The next morning began like any other with the scent of freshly brewed coffee, filling the penthouse and the low hum of the city beyond the windows. Liam entered the kitchen, expecting to find Sophia at the table with her notebook as she often was, but the space was empty. On the counter, however, lay an envelope with his name written in her neat handwriting. He opened it slowly, his pulse quickening as he read the short note inside. "You once told me this was an arrangement. Today I am choosing to arrange my own life. Don't wait up." His jaw tightened. He checked his phone and saw a notification from the security system indicating that the front door had opened at 7:42 a.m. He called her, but the call went to voicemail. An uneasy chill crept over him. Hours later, while he was in a meeting, his assistant appeared at the door with a hesitant expression. "Mr. Hart, you should see this." She handed him a printed article from a business news site. The headline read, "Hart Holdings CEO's Wife to Join Milan Luxury Project with Adrian Cole." Beneath it was a photo taken at the Hudson Gala Sophia. Standing beside Adrian, both mid-laugh, Liam's vision narrowed. He left the office without a word, the image burning in his mind. By the time he reached the penthouse, the late afternoon sun was slanting across the living room. Sophia was there, gathering a few things into a leather tote. "You're going to Milan?" he asked, his voice low but sharp. She did not look up. "Yes, it's an opportunity I won't get if I wait for your permission." He stepped closer. "Did you even consider how this looks? How it affects me?" She met his gaze, then her eyes cool. "For 2 years, Liam, you have done whatever you pleased, without considering how it affected me. Forgive me if I don't shape my life around your image." He exhaled slowly, trying to control the storm inside. "I found the contract," she said, suddenly her tone slicing through the air. "The one that outlines how long we have to stay married to secure the European deal. 5 years minimum. No children required. No intimacy expected. Just 2 signatures keeping up appearances." He went still. "That was before you decided to notice me," she interrupted. "Before you saw me crying in the shower and realized I'm a person. You think that erases 2 years of being invisible?" "It's not like that," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then tell me what it is," she demanded. Silence stretched between them. Finally, she shook her head. "You can't. And that's why I'm leaving." She slung the tote over her shoulder and walked toward the door. "Sophia," he said, his voice breaking just slightly. She paused but did not turn. "I don't want you to go. You didn't want me to stay either." She replied softly, then opened the door and stepped out. The sound of it closing echoed through the penthouse, like the final note of a song he hadn't realized was ending. For the rest of the night, Liam paced the living room, the city lights blurring beyond the glass. He thought of calling her again, but stopped himself. She had made her choice. And yet, for the first time in his life, he felt powerless, as if all the influence and money in the world could not buy back the one thing he was losing. By dawn, he knew what he had to do. It would cost him everything he had worked for, but if it brought her back, it would be worth it. He picked up the phone and called his father. "Cancel the European deal," he said. What his father's voice thundered. "Do you have any idea what you're throwing away?" "Yes," Liam said, "and I don't care. This isn't about business anymore." He hung up before his father could respond, the decision solid in his mind. The next step would be harder, finding Sophia. Before she boarded a flight to Italy, Liam did not waste time. By the time the city was fully awake, he was already in his car scanning the traffic ahead as his driver wove through the morning rush. His contacts had confirmed that Sophia was at her parents' townhouse, a quiet brick building on a tree-lined street, far removed from the steel and glass of his world. When he arrived, he told his driver to wait and climbed the steps alone. Her mother opened the door, surprise flickering across her face, before it shifted into something colder. "Liam," she said, her voice guarded. "She's here, isn't she?" he asked. Her mother hesitated, then stepped aside. "She's in the sunroom." Sophia was seated on a cream-colored love seat, sunlight spilling over her as she read. She did not look up when he entered. "We need to talk," he said. "We already did," she replied, turning a page. "You didn't hear me then," he said, "so hear me now. I've canceled the European deal." That made her glance up, disbelief in her eyes. "You what?" "The deal was the reason our marriage existed in the first place. Without it, there's no contract binding you to me. You're free to leave if you want." She closed the book slowly. "Why would you do that?" "Because I don't want this to be an arrangement anymore," he said. "I want it to be a marriage, a real one." Her brow furrowed suspicion, warring with something softer. "You expect me to believe that one decision erases everything." "No," he admitted, "it doesn't erase it, but it's a start, and it's the only way I know to prove that I'm choosing you over everything else." She looked away, her fingers tightening around the spine of her book. "This isn't just about me," she said finally. "There's something else." He hesitated, then crossed the room and sat across from her. "What is it?" She met his gaze, her eyes steady now. "I'm pregnant." The words landed between them like a stone, dropped in still water, sending shockwaves through the air. He searched her face for any sign that she was uncertain, but there was none. "You're sure?" She nodded once. "I found out 2 weeks ago. I wasn't going to tell you until I knew where we stood." A dozen thoughts collided in his mind: fear, protectiveness, a fierce need to be part of whatever came next. "You should have told me sooner," he said quietly. "Why?" she asked. "So you could add it to the list of obligations you never wanted." He shook his head. "So I could tell you I want to be here for all of it. For you, for the child, for us." She studied him, searching for the catch. "I don't trust easily, Liam. You've given me every reason not to." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm not asking you to trust me right now. I'm asking you to watch me to see if I mean what I say." The silence stretched, filled only by the distant hum of the city beyond the windows. Finally, she set the book aside and leaned back. "If I agree to stay, it won't be because of grand gestures or canceled deals. It will be because you show me every day that I'm not just decoration." His mouth curved slightly. "Then I'll start now." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. "This is the deed to your parents' house and the remaining shares of their company. They're yours, no strings attached." Her breath caught. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he said, "because your family's security shouldn't be tied to me or my company. I want you to know you can walk away at any time and I'll still want you to stay." She looked at the envelope, then back at him. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll give me a chance," he said. Her lips pressed together, and after a long pause, she whispered one chance. Relief washed through him, though he kept his expression composed. "That's all I need." For the first time in 2 years, they left together, walking side by side into the pale winter sunlight. The air between them charged with something fragile but alive. The days that followed were nothing like the 2 years before. Liam found himself paying attention to the details he had ignored for so long. He learned that Sophia preferred her coffee with just a splash of cream and no sugar, that she kept a small collection of vintage postcards in her desk drawer, and that she sometimes hummed under her breath when she worked on her sketches. He stopped scheduling early meetings so he could have breakfast with her, even if it was just toast and quiet conversation. At first, she kept her guard up, speaking to him in the same measured tones as before. But gradually those edges began to soften. One rainy afternoon, he found her in the living room, papers spread out around her as she worked on a new design concept. He brought her a mug of tea, and set it beside her without a word. She glanced up, her eyes lingering on him for a moment, before she said thank you. It was a small thing, but it felt like a step forward. He accompanied her to her first prenatal appointment, sitting beside her in the waiting room and ignoring the curious glances of strangers. When the doctor placed the grainy ultrasound image in her hands, Liam saw something flicker in Sophia's expression, wonder, fear, hope, all tangled together. He reached for her hand, and for the first time, she didn't pull away. "That's our child," he said softly, and her eyes met his, searching for any sign of pretense. She must have found none because she simply nodded. At home, he made space for her work, converting one of the unused rooms into a design studio. She stood in the doorway the day it was finished, her fingers brushing the edge of the drafting table. "You did this for me?" she asked. "For us," he corrected. The turning point came one evening when they were cooking together, an entirely new experience for both of them. He was clumsy with the knife, and she laughed a real unguarded laugh that lit up the room. "You're hopeless," she teased. "Teach me then," he said. She moved behind him, guiding his hands, her breath warm against his ear. It was the closest they had been in years, and neither stepped away. Over the weeks, he made a habit of leaving small notes for her, sometimes just a reminder to eat, sometimes a line from a poem, sometimes a simple "I see you." She kept them in a drawer, though he pretended not to notice. When she received a call from Adrian offering again to bring her on board for the Milan project, she surprised herself by declining. "My life is here now," she told him. "I have other plans." Liam never asked what she had said, but he saw the missed call on her phone and the quiet smile on her face that night. As winter melted into early spring, they began talking about the future, real conversations, not the contractual logistics that had once defined them. Sophia spoke of starting her own design firm, one that specialized in spaces that told a story. Liam offered to invest, but she told him she wanted to do it on her own. "Then I'll be your first client," he said. One Sunday morning, they visited the old Bennett Foundation building, which had fallen into disuse. Sunlight streamed through dust-coated windows as Sophia walked through the halls, describing her vision for a community arts center. Liam listened not as a businessman calculating returns, but as a husband proud of the woman beside him. "Let's do it," he said simply. "Together." It was in that moment she realized he meant every word he had been saying for weeks, and though the walls she had built were still there, a door had finally opened. 6 months later, the spring air in New York carried the faint scent of cherry blossoms drifting from the park below their building. Sophia stood before a mirror, adjusting the simple ivory dress she had chosen herself. It was not a designer gown meant for the society pages. It was soft flowing and hers. Behind her, Liam appeared in the reflection, wearing a suit that was sharp yet understated. "Ready?" he asked. She met his gaze in the mirror and nodded. This wedding was nothing like the first. There were no photographers, no business associates, no staged smiles. Just a small gathering of family and close friends in the garden of the newly restored Bennett Foundation building. They exchanged vows under an archway covered in pale roses, their words quiet but certain. "I choose you," Liam said, his voice steady. "Every day for as long as you'll let me." Sophia's reply was simple. "I'll let you as long as you remember. I'm not here to be seen. I'm here to be loved." When they kissed this time, it was slow, deliberate. the seal on a promise made without contracts or conditions. A year later, the building had been transformed into a community arts center. Children's laughter echoed through the halls as Sophia walked between easels greeting young artists and their families. Liam was in his office upstairs, reviewing proposals for expanding the center's programs. He had kept his word. He was her partner in every way. Their home life was different too. The once silent penthouse was now filled with warmth, with conversation over breakfast, with the quiet joy of two people who no longer measured each other's worth by utility. On a late summer afternoon, Sophia returned home to find Liam in the nursery, rocking their infant daughter. The sight stopped her at the door. He was speaking softly, telling the baby about the city lights, about the places they would show her one day. When he looked up and saw Sophia, a smile spread across his face, one that reached his eyes completely. "She's almost asleep," he whispered. Sophia stepped into the room, leaning against his shoulder, as they both looked down at the tiny bundle. In that moment, she thought of the woman she had been 2 years ago, the one who had agreed to a marriage out of duty and lived as a shadow in her own life. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone who had been seen, valued, and loved for exactly who she was. Liam pressed a kiss to her hair and murmured, "Never just decoration, always my heart." The words sank deep, not as a dramatic declaration, but as a truth proven over time. And as the city stretched out beyond their windows, Sophia knew that home was not the penthouse or the garden or the restored foundation building. Home was here in the choice they made every day to stand side by side. Sometimes she thought love does not arrive with fireworks or grand beginnings. Sometimes it comes quietly after mistakes and distance, and it stays because two people decide to see each other and to keep choosing each other no matter how the world once defined them.